Welcome to Forum 360 with a global outlook and a local view. I'm Ardith Kack, your host today. This is the perfect time to write a book on civility. We need more civility today. And with me is Joy Marcella, the author of the book, Creating a New Civility. Joy is a teacher, a writer, scholar, and traveler. She has a PhD in American Studies and has lived in 10 different places in her lifetime. The preamble to our Constitution of the United States reads, "We of the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity." And it goes on proposing that we live with civility. So Joy, what is your definition of civility?
Well, one of the things that I might say in preface to explaining my definition is that my research into civility taught me to think big about civility. So my definition goes beyond the things that people usually go to when you ask them to define civility, which are something like courtesy, good manners at grandma's house, and so on. In my research, I discovered a scholar whose name is Adam McClellan, who in fact wrote an article called Defining a New Civility. And his definition of a new civility is a commitment and dedication to the full humanity of us all, a recognition of the interdependence of us all, and a commitment to work for common causes that work toward common good. So that's the three-part definition of civility that I work with in the book. I like to think of that as a strong civility, a hearty civility, that it supports not only the preamble that you read to, the Constitution, but our democracy itself. So it was an exciting moment when I discovered that article, because I thought, here is the definition of civility that I can work with and that I want to write around. And so that was my aha moment.
Okay, well, in your book, you state civility begins with us, and how true that is. You believe in the common good, and you mentioned it in your definition. What would you say is the common good?
Well, the common good has a number of definitions. In my book, I quote Robert Reich's definition from his book, The Common Good. But let us say that it's behavior that takes into account the differences of us all, the needs of us all, and works toward the goals of fulfilling what is best for all.
Does courtesy come with civility?
Say again, does courtesy
Come with civility?
Courtesy, I believe, folds into civility. I think that one of the ways that one scholar, for instance, a team of researchers who've written a recent book on civility, interestingly, calls courtesy weak civility. they call what the kind of courtesy that I just defined, or this kind of civility that I just defined, strong civility. Courtesy, more weak, because for them, it works on particular situations, in particular moments, with particular people. So I think, I'm not sure I agree with their definition or their description of that kind of civility as weak. We certainly need it in the passing moments of our days and the encounters we have with one another. My thought is that that kind of civility folds in to this larger sense of civility that I'm thinking of, that really does work toward realizing us in our full humanity and to working toward the common good. So they're absolutely necessary.
If I'm understanding you correctly, uh, courtesy comes with civility and they go hand in hand, or do they?
Civility comes with civility, and
Courtesy comes. Does
yes,
courtesy come with civility? Do they
yes.
go hand in hand?
Oh, some of your words are blocking out for me for some reason. Yes, of course, in that sense, they they go hand in hand, but I really like the image or the metaphor a little better of civility folding into, or courtesy folding into civility. So we think of courtesy as serving a larger civility.
Who did you write this book?
Who did I write with before?
The book.
Um,
Who did you write the book for?
oh, who did I write the book for? I'm sorry that I'm getting, your words are not all coming through clearly to me. Um, well, I taught for 30 years at the University of Hawaii. I taught undergraduates. So I think the range of undergraduates whom I taught were always on my mind. And I thought of what I would say to convince, say, them as a group of this, um, of the possibilities for civility. So yes, that's me. Yes, I'm the professor teacher, and I wanted to create something. I think that's why I suggest to my readers that they think of keeping notes and that they keep talking with one another, which is what students in my class did. So that was my limited audience. But Ardith, I was writing for the population as a whole. And I had in mind what was going on, what is going on in the country now, and what was going on in the years, the 3 or 4 years that I wrote the book, when I actually did the writing. So, and throughout the book, I address particulars. I just read this morning, I was thumbing through my book to refresh my mind, and I saw the passage that I wrote where I explained that when a number of people told me when they learned I was writing a book that I should be sure to send a copy to President Trump. So I would say that yes, the present situation was always on my mind. And so I wrote to citizens generally.
How do you, or is there a way to reach those who should read it, but maybe wouldn't read it? Is there a way that we can get some of those people, short of sending them the book, obviously?
Well, there are ways, I think.
Programs like this, perhaps, to try to inspire people.
Yes. I've got my website, But of course, that assumes that someone has the technology to be able to access it. And as your point about the fact that they want to access it,
Mhm.
you know, and I think of Twitter as a way to get a message out there. And I opened a Twitter account, and quite honestly, Ardith, I'm still thinking how best to use that. Twitter is wonderful. It's a democratic thing in that it allows access to almost anybody. But of course, and it allows them to say what they want to say. But what we end up with so often on Twitter are remarks that are just, they're totally incivil.
Mhm.
They're racist.
Right.
They can be xenophobic. They're, and there's no way to control that. Here's what here's my latest thought on that. And this is something that I'm thinking I might try as maybe a New Year's resolution. A Twitter a day in which I pull from not necessarily my book, but my notes with a kind of provocative comment about the value of civility, and just put it out there and be faithful to that, and hope perhaps a thread emerges in which there can be a discussion. I think that might be better than a blog, which is another idea. But I'm a better reader and researcher and figuring things out than I am a blogger. I've learned that about myself, and so I like that idea of gleaning the best from my research, getting it out there as an idea that might be provocative to the people who come to Twitter to speak their minds.
Okay. When you read your book, which I have,
Thank you.
you get the reader very involved in doing things, and that's a
Yes.
wonderful capability. One of them is journaling. Can you tell me about journaling?
Journaling is powerful. I'm not sure that most of us, and I need to keep reminding myself, understand how powerful journaling is, because what you have, let's just say we write morning notes in a journal. They don't even have to be more than notes. They don't have to be completely thought out passages, but just thoughts that come to mind. And then the amazing part about it is that if you do that over several days, they're there for your review. And from the review, you have the possibility of gleaning what one rhetorician, Peter Elbow, calls a center of gravity, a major idea or an idea. It's maybe not a glint, maybe it's only a glint of an idea that's there. You form that into a sentence that's a departure for a morning note. And so what happens is your thinking progresses. The word for the scholarly word for that is that to say that journaling has in itself an epistemic quality, in that it's possible through the very act of journaling to create knowledge.
Uh-huh.
So,
all along, ask your reader to write down ideas, thoughts, and things that they have learned from the book. And I think it's wonderful. Tell me, what is mindfulness?
Mindfulness is a way to position yourself in this moment now. The power of mindfulness comes really from the power of the mind. I keep a note here on my bulletin board to always remind me. And this comes from the scholar Daniel Siegel. the mind itself has the quality of being embodied, that is in our bodies. It's organized, it's self-organized. It copes and is trained to, and functions rather, to deal with emerging ideas. And it's by definition relational. So, and Siegel believes that that in the sense that it's relational is that my mind exists in a continuum right now in the middle with yours. So you and I and the other people watching right now are in a relational moment that is mindful. And so it's really interesting. And so so you bring that power into self and think of self as I do in the book as body, heart, mind, and soul. So that's the self that sits in mindfulness, learns to breathe deeply, and eventually does the body scans that through practice allow you to get to mindfulness quickly and to use it as a way to get you through crises.
We're talking on Earth with a global outlook view about civility. And with me is Joy Marcella, who wrote the book, Creating a New Civility. And I want to go on with mindfulness a little bit, Joy. How does it connect with civility?
Well, mindfulness has and this is true if one can learn to go to it regularly, has the quality of situating you in the ongoing moment, in ongoing moments of time. And that quality of the practice through the meditations, through the body scans, through the awareness of the self, through body, heart, mind, soul, positions one to be aware. That's the key word for me. It gives me an awareness. And I believe that this awareness is absolutely critical to the ability to be civil. Yeah. And so that's why it's so important to me. By the way, I know that the positive psychologist Martin Seligman, who's written a book about 10 critical life skills, says he believes that mindfulness is the very most critical of them all.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting?
A chapter of your book deals with listening. And I wonder if you can tell me what artful listening is.
Well, first of all, let me just talk a little bit about listening, because I think deep listening is the way we access others' minds. We hear through their words. And so that listening to the person first, hearing what they're saying, is a critical dynamic in the act, in the civil act. And so, and I think we get to artful listening when we think of ourselves listening. And here's another idea that's not mine, that belongs to David Brooks, listening with what he calls awe, A-W-E, listen with awe. And that then allows you to see, I think, beauty in a conversation, the self under the self, who has potential for meaning making. That's another kind of epistemic thing, you know. So the artful listening is, and again, Brooks says, listen for the story under the story, to get to what a person is thinking of.
So important.
Yes.
In politics, we certainly lately have needed more civility. What kind of people do we want in control of our government?
I heard you say, just to check, how can they bring civility to help
What
control
kind
government?
of people do we need in our government?
What kind of people do we need in our government? Well, it's a wonderful lead-in for me to say people who act with civility. We want them to be fair. I mean, another way I construct civility, I use the McClellan definition, but I think of civility as composed of fairness, awareness. Through the listening, we get to harmony. Through caring consciousness raising, we get to compassion. And then we get to insight. So I think we want someone who's got those qualities. Now, here's the thing, they get in the political arena, and we could say both the liberal and the democratic traditions have civility ideas at their base. That's true. It's what the people who go to the political scene, whether it's local or state or national, do with the philosophies that results in incivilities and stalls progress in the bargain.
How would you say race is involved with civility?
Would you repeat that?
How would you say race
Race.
is involved with civility?
Well, I connect race's connection with civility through identity. I think that my very first step that I ask readers to do in the book is to examine their identities for the purpose of getting to fairness. And I was influenced by one of my colleagues, Ruth Shue, to use the concept or to think through the concept of markers. In other words, our identity is marked by certain qualities. You and I are marked by the time we were born, which gives us our age, gender, and of course and we have the marker then of race. We have the marker of the place we live in, the ethnicity we have, the social class we're in, and eventually, as we grow up, the politics, the religion, and the education we associate with. So race is it's up there. It's one of those things we're born with. It's central to our identity. And it's critical. I think I associate it with fairness. So what I ask readers to do is think of themselves there in terms of race, and to say, regarding my race, have I been treated fairly? Have I treated others fairly? And in either case, how so? How so? And what remedies then must I go to? So, and of course, I think we need to back up and say the incivilities in our country right now largely go, in very large part, go to racial injustices. So the social problems that we have surround race, and then of course race intersects, and feminists like to use that word, with social class. The problems of race relate to lack of money, poor education, hunger, and so on. So that's how and so that's philosophically how I connect race to civility.
I like your definition concerning fairness, and all that that entails. Um, you also state resist the tribalism of identity politics. And boy, is that important right now.
Yes, yes. Well, that natural association we have to affiliate with like-minded people and then to promote the cause and to stop listening in the process other than to the like-minded people. And so their ideas narrow, they get sharper, and depending, if they're the tribalism tends to prize one group over another. You know.
From your book, this is a quote: the purpose of our civility journey, after all, is to allow all of us to flourish. I close with that quote from your book, Creating a New Civility. Here it is. Thank you, Joy, for being here today. This is Ardith Keck for Forum 360.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.